Hello and good evening, everyone. It is your good friend, Mr. Eric Norton. I'm here with my good friend, Mr. Steve Grad. A little later in the show, we're going to bring on our friend, Mr. Frank Weinstein. We're going to talk a little bit about autographs, chasing Hall of Famers, all that kind of stuff. But before we got to him, I wanted to say good evening to you, Steve. How are you?
What is up, Eric? Give me the lowdown. Give me the showdown. Tell me how things are.
I am enjoying the NBA playoffs. I'm a little upset that we're doing this right in the middle of game one between the Celtics and the Heat. Excited for football. What a great first weekend. But happy to be here nonetheless.
I don't watch NBA playoffs. I don't really watch NBA anymore. I mean, once Jordan left, I went to a basketball game last year. I went to a Denver Nuggets game. I think they might have played Dallas. I don't even remember. And I just ended up drinking the whole game, unlike the concourse. And I literally never went to the seats, which were like 6 rows off the floor. Mike Fruitman, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, if everybody knows Mike, one of the great guys out there, and really one of the best dudes I know. He got me some tickets. I paid for them, by the way, just in case you're asking. They were expensive, but they were really close to the floor. Before the game, he let me go down there and shoot some baskets. So I thought that was kind of cool. So I got to shoot some baskets there, the Denver Nuggets arena. And then the game started, went up to the seats, and then we went down to the court after the game and hung out with him because Mike runs like the whole floor of security. So, those guys that break people in half, he's one of them. He showed me a move that literally could have just broke me. But that's my NBA basketball story. Years ago, and I want to bring this stuff out sometime. I've got, I found this stuff recently. I found all my old NBA credentials from when I covered the Bulls.
Oh, wow.
96 and 97 finals. So I still have all those. And I was kind of going through them like, man, this stuff's pretty cool because it was so timely with The Last Dance. And then here I have all these credentials. And I was kind of going through them and reminiscing and pulling out old clippings. And I was like, man, this stuff was still pretty cool. I got to do that back then and cover the Bulls all those years. And that's really when I stopped. Like when Jordan left the Bulls, I just quit watching basketball. I don't think I've watched 5 games since then in my life. And I think I've been to 3 of them. Of those 5. So
Mike is a great guy. I've known him since I was 19 years old, and he has done that. He has been the head guy for security there for a long time. When it was it was McNichols Arena.
McNichols Arena. Yeah. And I've been to a lot of basketball arenas too. I mean, I used to enjoy it so much, but it just lost it when Jordan left, and now I'm not a big LeBron guy. I like watching Kobe play, though. I watched him play a little bit, and he was always a fun player, but I didn't really do much with basketball, man. And hockey, I like. Hockey, I watched a little hockey yesterday. But, I'm kind of caught up with baseball right now. I didn't want to get excited about it, and then here I am getting excited about it, and I don't know how you feel. I mean, you're down there in Texas. You've got the Rangers, but you're also going to be hosting a lot of playoff baseball, and that stadium is going to be used for the World Series as well.
Right. I'm tentatively excited about it. If we could get to a game, maybe that might be cool. I don't know if that's going to happen. They're talking about it. There's this weekend the Dallas Cowboys are playing at home, and they're going to have it at like 20,000 people or 17,000 people or something like that. Okay. So if they can do that right there, then right next door, I think they should be able to get 15,000 people into that brand new stadium.
Who are the Cowboys going to lose to?
I don't know who they're playing. I have no idea.
Yeah, I know you're not a Cowboy guy. I will tell you, this past weekend I was in Vegas and really stayed away mostly from the Strip. Watched some football on Sunday at the Paris, but that was it. But we had a great day Saturday at Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. I wanted to thank them for having us out there.
Absolutely. We've got to get Rick on the show. You think Rick will ever do this show?
Yeah, you know what? I'll talk to him. I'm going to see him really soon, and I will talk to him about having him on. I don't know if he'll do it. I have to probably talk to his PR person.
Sure, I understand.
I have to go through his PR person, and we're good friends, So, but no, I'll have to talk to him about it because I would like to get him on. Maybe we'll get Chumley on first.
Either way, that'll work.
Maybe that'll go first. So, at any rate, I need to get him on. I'd love to have him on and talk a little bit about, what he used to love, what his football team was. Did he tell you?
When I talked to him, he lived in San Diego. He was a Chargers fan. Was he a Charger fan?
Yeah. Good man. Yeah. Good memory. Yeah. We went to a Charger game, I think like 4 years ago, maybe 5. And it was the Bears and Chargers on Monday Night Football.
Oh man.
And I remember telling him leading up to it, at CM, we'd be filming. I'm like, don't forget. And finally, like, I think it was on a Sunday, that like Friday, he's like, all right, I'm coming down. He's like, I got tickets. It's all taken care of. He flies in to this little airfield in San Diego. We go to the game. We have like a car that takes us, a bunch of us, his son and a bunch of people. And it was a great game. We sat in the owner's box. We went up first. We went right up to the owner's box. Nobody likes the Spanos family there, but they were very nice people. And they took us right down to the field. Spanos' wife or whoever, she took Rick and I personally down to the field, onto the field before the game, which I had not been on a field like before an NFL game. That was pretty cool. And then we stood on the sidelines for a while, and they took us up to their box, and we watched the game. The only thing is they go, sir, you're going to have to take off your Bears jersey. They had a little bag for me. They had like a see-through bag. So I don't know. Yeah, it was pretty funny.
We kind of scrambled finding a guest tonight. We had one guy lined up, and that kind of fell through. But I don't want to call Frank a backup plan, but that's kind of what he is. No offense, Frank, but he's going to jump on here with us. You thought of Frank. You said that he's got a great collection. You wanted to feature some of it.
Yeah, I do. So make a long story short for everybody out there that doesn't know Frank. Frank is out of the Detroit area, the Detroit metro area. Frank is a old school collector of baseball and autographs, just autographs, but he's old school. And Frank and I met in the weirdest way possible. So bring him on and I'll explain it because I thought it was a pretty funny story.
Absolutely. Frank did not want to tell this story, but we're going to add him to the stream now. Hello, Mr.
I'm going to tell him.
How are you?
Hey, Frank. So
I'm upset you still remember this story, but go ahead.
So Frank called. Frank probably has a big mouth sometimes, and he says stuff that he might not know or doesn't. No, just joking. It turns out, by the way, Frank's one of the best guys I've met in this business. So, but Frank had made a comment about some, on a Facebook page somewhere about my days at PSA, and I said, I saw it, and I messaged him. I said, you know what, Frank, that's not true. Let's talk about it. And so we had this long discussion, and next thing you know, we're meeting in Detroit, having breakfast and sitting down and enjoying talking about autographs. So I met a really good friend just saying, hey, let's get the record straight on this. And Frank is old school collector. And right behind him, he's got a nice Empire Strikes Back poster, which is autographed, beautiful. It's a gorgeous poster, trust me. But Frank is just Frank, how would you describe your collecting? Because I've seen the stuff you have, and it's not amateur level. You've got some really phenomenal stuff.
I appreciate that, Steve. I would say it's very baseball-centric with a hint of Empire Strikes Back. I started it, and I figured I might as well go for the whole piece, which I decided to do. I got very lucky. I got some of the signatures right before some of the key cast and crew passed away, and I finished that. But then other than that, I pretty much I stay strictly to baseball.
So tell me, COVID happens in March, right? We don't have sports going on. Frank, you're a collector. This is what I want to know from collectors. Has your collecting interest been kicking in since then? Have you been really super interested in collecting autographs since all this has started? Has it heightened your awareness, or are you looking for different stuff, or is it just status quo for you?
Like many people, I remember talking to you, Steve, about this earlier. I thought right when COVID started, I'm a CPA, so I thought a lot of people would hold their money close, would not want to spend. And I couldn't have been any further from the truth. Everyone is spending now, myself included. Turns out, like many other people, I have more money because I'm not spending it on vacations or concerts or anything like that. So I have been buying pretty steadily since April.
And so your focus, Baseball Hall of Fame, of course.
Yes.
Okay. But you mentioned Empire Strikes Back. I find that interesting because you're not focused on the other films or Star Wars or Jedi, Force Awakens, yada, yada, yada. You like one movie and you're going to stick with that, right?
To be honest with you, when I was in college, this poster came out and I thought it was just a really nice looking poster. So I bought the poster. In 1998, I went to Wizard World Con or whatever it was called in Chicago at the Rosemont. They had the men behind the masks. So I got Bullock, I got Prowse, I got Peter Mayhew, and Kenny Baker. And after that, there was I think Hamill did a celebration, and I started sending them out. And I got everyone that did shows. And it felt, I'm like a completionist, for lack of a better term, and I wanted to complete the poster. So I got in touch with a lot of people. It was called the Rebel Scum Forum, I want to say.
Yeah.
So I got in touch with K9, who was really the big asset for me. And he was able to secure Ford for me. My sister, who works in the entertainment industry, sent me something that Frank Oz was going to be at this little private screening. So I remember writing Anthony right away, like, you have to help me with this, because he still had the poster in New York. So I was able to get Frank Oz before anybody else. This was at the time before he was doing appearances again. And probably the toughest one, believe it or not, was Lawrence Kasdan. He did a Darling Companion, was the movie he did. And he did a premiere in Miami, and I was able to get in touch with the collector. And that's how I got Lawrence Kasdan. And I heard stories like people were trying to bribe him to buy the poster. I didn't know this consigner, for lack of a better term. I got very lucky that he was someone I could trust. So I learned reputation in this industry really is everything. You have to know who to trust.
It is. You mentioned Lawrence Kasdan, and I've been lucky enough to meet him 3 or 4 times. Very fortunate actually. And he's kind of moody. He's just he gets put off by it. But he used to say, all right, he'd talk like this. He'd be like, how many you got? Well, I have 25. All right. Okay. Give me a minute. And then he'd do it all. So he was just a weird dude. But now he's about one apiece. But this is years ago, back in, 10, 12 years ago, when I was getting all those guys at Hollywood events and all that stuff. So, Frank, you like that stuff. Tell me about your baseball interest. And Eric, this guy has got some really nice baseball stuff, and maybe some names, I don't know, you've heard about or not heard about. But, I mean, we're not talking about he specializes in Bob Feller and Bob Gibson autographs. This is some pretty serious stuff.
Yeah, my passion started early on. I remember in 1987, there was a Tiger prospect named Matt Noakes. You may remember him from his time at the Heat.
Yeah, I remember Matt Noakes, of course. Yeah.
So he did a show here. He was the hottest thing around. He did a show here for $2.50. He would sign anything. So we get to the show, and he sold out. But they go, we have this guy for $6. His name is Frank Robinson. He's a Hall of Famer. You may want to get him instead. Honestly, I never heard of Frank Robinson at that time. The only reason why I got him is because my name was Frank. So I go up to Frank Robinson. I buy the ticket. I said, my name is Frank also. Can you put 2 Frank? He signs the autograph and says no. So, but ever since then, I would start attending the National. The first one was 93 in Chicago. It was McCormick Place. Is that what it's called?
The first National Chicago.
The 93 one.
It was 93 was at McCormick Place. I did that show. The one before it, I want to say was a year or 2 before it, was at the Hyatt, I think downtown. But I was at all those shows, but the one at McCormick Place I actually set up. It was a great show. It was a wonderful show.
It was a great show, and then you had access to all these Hall of Famers. They were all signing. They were all very nice. My favorite story from that show was on the last day, they had 2 free signers. One was, I'm going to butcher her name, Manon Reume, the female goaltender. And they had this other guy named Walter Payton. And you could pick which one you wanted, but you couldn't get both. So naturally, I picked Walter Payton, but the line for Manon had to be twice as long as Walter Payton. I still, to this day, could never figure out why. But you don't see that anymore. I remember the National used to have free signings all the time at the show. As a matter of fact, right. I believe the 97 National, maybe it was the 95 National, every signer was free. So those times are obviously long gone.
Yeah, it's a lot of things have changed, haven't they?
Yeah.
And that's what usually happens. So, yeah, but I'm not talking about Matt Noakes anymore. So tell me about I mean, let's forget about Matt Noakes, okay?
Okay.
And everybody, thanks for tuning in tonight to hear about Matt Noakes stories. And if you remember Matt Noakes, he was a nice catcher, and he had his rookie card was 88 Flair maybe, or 87, something like that. And I remember getting him many times as a player. It was real easy. But Matt Noakes is born.
I'm sorry to bore your audience. No. So my goal at the time was to get every living Hall of Famer in person, which was a challenge, but not terribly challenging. The only real tough one was Al Lopez at the time. He just would not leave his Tampa home to do his show. So believe it or not, I tracked his address down using the old Smalling guide. I wrote him a note, and I had to find his house, which was not easy before the days of Yahoo and MapQuest and all that. And so in 2001, I got Kirby Puckett in Houston, which was the last living Hall of Famer I needed at the time. And at that same time, the whole Operation Bullpen went down. So I bought the book. I read a lot about it as much as I could. I got myself educated, which was really important back then. And then I said, okay, I'm going to go for the deceased ones, which is an impossible task for anyone that tries. I've had a lot of people write to me saying, I want to get every Hall of Famer on a baseball. I'm like, just stop right there. It's never going to happen. You have to set your expectations as something realistic. And the good thing about the Baseball Hall of Fame is I'd say you can get almost 3/4 of all the Hall of Famers ever for maybe $250 or less.
Right.
So that was very appealing to me at the time. And then fortunately, my career progressed. I was able to afford the tougher Hall of Famers, the more obscure Hall of Famers, the Tim Keefes, the Eddie Planks, the Ray Browns of the Hall of Fame collecting world.
So do you have any you could show us?
I could. I'd be glad to. One I got recently, and being from Chicago, you would appreciate this. The Baseball Status Lexicon is Tinker to Everest to Chance, of course.
Yeah, of course.
I was able to get a signed Tinker letter. I don't know if you can see that or not.
Nice. That's a really nice piece.
So this is a handwritten letter. And so the person requesting this is asking Joe Tinker to sign this letter, asking how to get in touch with Johnny Evers, and finally how to write and get a hold of Frank Chance, who had been dead for over 20 years. I got lucky about 5 years later, the corresponding letter that went to Tinker's that also went to Evers. I don't know if you can see that.
That's great.
Also came up at auction, and a small little auction house. So again, same person received the same letter again from Evers, talking about Chance, and again asking if he can get Chance's autograph. Probably written around the same time, and again noting Chance was dead. For
everybody out there, Joe Tinker died in 1948.
Yeah.
So Tinker's Evers to Chance, and a lot of people forget about this stuff. And these players. Johnny Evers died in 47. And Frank Chance died way before them. He died in 1924, but that was a very famous duo back, or trio back then. Tinker's Evers to Chance was very famous, and collecting their autographs is kind of a cool thing. I mean, I think Tinker is probably the easiest, unfortunately, but
correct.
Still all three of them are worth really good money. Evers died the year before, and obviously, Frank Chance. Do you have Frank Chance stuff too with you by any chance?
I may have. This is. I don't know if you can see the letterhead first. I really like the letterhead.
That's beautiful.
You can see that at the little cub ranch, the little bear with a little cub on it, holding a baseball bat.
That's great.
Okay? And this is from 1923, and you can see Frank Chance's autograph down there.
That's beautiful.
So I was very fortunate. There were still dealers, which are very far and few between right now in the vintage autograph market. And he was willing to work with me. So we established a payment plan where I could pay over time. I'm by no means rich in that regard. But fortunately, like I said before, it's all about reputation and relationships you build in this industry. So fortunately, I think I have a good name in the industry. And because of that, we were able to come to terms where I was able to acquire that signature. And that's probably one of the most prized autographs in my collection.
That's pretty cool, dude. That's really neat to have that stuff. And I think, I've seen a lot of guys who have their collections styled after kind of, letters or neat stuff like that. Letters, documents, checks. Frank, you have an eye for quality, obviously. And you turn it into that, turn into some good stuff.
And just to go one step into that, I'm very careful about cuts. And this is where Beckett really comes into play, because cuts are so dangerous, for lack of a better term, for these early guys. So everything, if I do buy a cut, which I try to avoid, they have to be now Beckett authenticated. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
Thank you.
And another one I just picked up, and again, these are going to bore a lot of your people, but I just picked this up as a Ned Hamlin 1897 autograph.
And that's a pretty tough signature right there.
Yeah, so there's about maybe 10 of these around.
Wow.
And again, the same dealer, he's getting out of vintage autograph. He said the market right now is in modern autographs. So that's one thing. I was just, again, fortunate, right time, right place. A final one I just wanted to show you real quickly. And this shows you never know where you're going to find something. Again, going back to Chicago, not a White Sox, but again, another, I guess, a Cub. And I was on Etsy of all places. And there was a person that had this book.
What are you doing on Etsy?
Don't ask. I'm looking for autographs. That's what I'm always doing. So they had this book in memoriam, and they advertised it saying it's signed by the mayor of Chicago, which it was. I'm not going to lie about that. I don't know if you could see the signature or not.
There we go. Nice.
So, and but it's also, it has the city of seal, but right below the mayor of Chicago was the city clerk of Chicago at the time, who happened to be Cap Anson.
Did they name that in the listing?
No.
We had no idea.
They had no idea. And again, you read a story recently about Moonlight Graham. Someone was searching for his autograph by looking for like old high school yearbooks that he was featured in and was able to secure a signature. It's the same thing. You got to go. You have to search around. I have my Google searches, my trackers, my eBays. It's amazing. It's difficult now because of all the auction houses. This I probably acquired about 10 years ago, and they just happen to pop up from time to time. You just have to get lucky and be on top of things.
Eric, you heard that name mentioned too, Moonlight Graham.
Yeah. Right.
So if you watch the movie, of course, that was based on all that stuff. Well, Moonlight Graham was part of it, Field of Dreams. I did some background research because I did a partial interview, and the story hasn't aired yet, but it will at some point, and I have to give some more information on it. But finding Moonlight Graham autographs is pretty tough. And I've come across, don't quote me here, I think I might have 6 to 8 in my exemplars, somewhere in there.
Wow.
Right in that ballpark. I believe one of them is his draft registration card for World War I. I'm pretty sure. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. I don't have access to the stuff right now, but he's a really tough autograph, but he's also a very famous name. Do you have him on anything?
Do I? Yeah. I only collect Hall of Famers and potential Hall of Famers. With the exception of Pete Rose, which I won't get into. So like I've never looked for a Joe Jackson autograph. I have been offered his driver license for sale, which I passed on. So if they are not eligible for Cooperstown, which obviously Archibald Graham is not, they are not in my personal repertoire of autographs that I'm looking to collect.
Okay. But I mean, if you came by one, you wouldn't pass it up.
I know people that are looking for him. The industry, the niche that I collect is getting smaller and smaller. And so I would let other colleagues know that, by the way, this is available. And I would hope they've done that for me as well. They're giving me a little heads up tips when autographs come up for sale.
Frank, how tight knit is that set of collectors there? That those guys that are looking for these autographs. You guys all pretty close, because it sounds like some of them have helped you out, just like you said, and you'd be willing to help them out. Can that be true for the most part, or are people out there just looking out for themselves?
I think you have a little bit of both, if that makes any sense at all. I think there's some very high net worth individuals out there that don't want their collections public at all. I know one of those is being broken up currently, and you're going to see a lot of rare autographs between now and the end of the year, like the Mike Kellys, the Candy Cummings, that you have never seen come to market before.
Where's that stuff going to?
It's going to Hunt.
Okay, and who's
from the Green Diamond Gallery? And like the only time I've seen this before in the last 10 to 15 years, Christie's had an auction. Yeah. Again, not very well publicized at all for such a large auction house. And they had a Rube Foster autograph, a George Davis autograph. These are autographs you're lucky to see once in your lifetime come up for sale in a public forum. And so I'm very excited for the Green Diamond. I've probably outed it right now for that auction.
But there's somebody else that's holding on to, I know a couple guys who are holding on to some phenomenal stuff. And
I'm sure they're out there, but it's not public.
It's not public at all.
So, I mean, there's probably a group of 5 to 7, I'll say, want to get them all people that we're looking for everything. We have each other's want lists. There's several dealers out there that have my want list, and they know if something comes up to contact me first, because I've done business with them in the past. So that always helps as well.
Frank, Ziggy is newer to the show, but he's got a few questions here that I'd like to get to, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Actually, the first one's for Steve, and this is kind of it's relative to what we're talking about here. Are there more or less fake autos now out there? I know that there was that big bust recently that took a lot of those fake autos out of the system.
It was up in Michigan.
Yeah, I was up in Michigan, and people are trying hard. They're trying real hard to get rid of fake autos out there. But would you say that there are more or less fake autos now?
Me or Frank?
You, Steve.
Well, to be honest with you, I think they're still out there. I think they're still in people's collections, and I continue to see them. I mean, it's not like they're being destroyed. That's the thing. Like when you look at those super high end, like the Hankel bust in Michigan just recently in July, that stuff is still in people's collections. And a lot of those people that own that stuff, Eric, we showed some of the stuff that that's sitting in someone's collection. That Eddie Goodell, that is in someone's collection. They would probably deny to the day they die that it's not, something from that guy, but it is, unfortunately. And I think stuff like that just sits there. I don't know what people do with it. It's hard to destroy something you paid $10,000 or $15,000 for. I think people would have a tough time with it, a real tough time.
Absolutely.
Just to go on to that, friend's father presented me one of those 55 Clubhouse Dodger balls. It's so sentimental to him. And I said, I would go get this authenticated. I said, Beckett's going to be in Detroit. And it's like, I don't need it authenticated. I know it's real. Now, I knew based on all the studying and research I've done that it was not real. They had the classic, I believe it's Erskine, Campanella, Robinson right down the line. But he was just so sentimentally attached to this baseball. I didn't want to press the issue any further.
I understand that. I mean, that would be tough. Like Steve just said, if you paid $15,000 for something, I don't want to know it's fake. I would rather just hold on to that.
It's tough, dude. It's really hard. You know what? The one thing I've talked about, Eric, it's happened many times in the past. I've been at Star Wars shows or comic conventions, and people, especially the Star Wars celebrations, and people go up to whoever it is, the guy who played Kenny Baker when he was alive, or Paul Blake, who was Greedo, and they're getting their poster signed, and I'm behind the person. I'm like, hey, do you know? Just real quick, that whole poster is bad. You're just pumping real money into a fake piece. And usually the people flip out because they don't want to hear it. And it's the same thing with authentication too. We've had so many people say, hey, wait a minute, my grandfather got this signed. It's a reprint ball. They buy them at the concession stands at the game. So we have kind of gone through that so many times in the past, and it's kind of a reoccurring theme.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see with that as well. Ziggy wants to know again, for you, Frank, where do collectors collaborate and communicate? Is it on Facebook forums or on Facebook or a forum, or guys that are looking for these Hall of Fame autographs? Where do you guys kind of hang out and socialize on social media?
A lot of it is in forums, and a lot of it is we meet on forums and we go on Facebooks, and then there's a lot of the big auction houses which you know about, and we'll point out. We'll even say to each other, "Did you see this? Charles Comiskey's signed letter." I'm not going to bid above X dollars on it, but if you want, you can bid above and beyond that. So we're sort of helping each other out, setting each other up, letting us know where our price points are. So we're not overbidding each other at the end, because especially when it comes to these higher end autographs, a lot of them, again, there are not that many collectors out there that can afford it, and they're actually going out and trying to hunt down like these Ned Hamlin autographs.
Mm-hmm.
Just go to the Hall of Fame, Frank. They all exist there.
So, I've already missed that opportunity. I think Barry already did that for us.
It was actually somebody else. Barry was the New York Public Library.
I'm sorry. I get him confused.
That's old hobby lore. There was a lot of people involved in that made that happen, but Barry Helper had a lot of stuff that came from the New York Public Library, and there was actually a lot of stuff that came from the Baseball Hall of Fame. It was, for a long time, they had to basically shut the place down and really limit who goes in there. I was able to go there 2010, and I studied for about 4 or 5 days. And then also, let's not forget all the teams that have been pillaged, like the Dodgers, who are having some legal issues with that right now because they've had so many documents and contracts and letters just disappear from their files through the years. And that's what happens with this stuff, is that, Frank, if you think about it, I think back in the day, there'd be 3 copies of a contract.
Correct.
And, eventually, the team has a copy and the lawyer has a copy and the player's supposed to have a copy. So stuff gets separated and lost, and, whatever happens through the years, but stuff does go missing, or, stuff gets destroyed. Law offices, they don't pay their bills on their storage and someone finds all their documents. So, that type of stuff happens all the time. So, I've seen a lot of that stuff that has unfortunately been stolen. The New York Public Library had stamps on the back of their stuff, and people would just try and erase it out or use like a yellow type, whiteout, but yellow whiteout, and go over the New York Public Library stamps. And it's crazy what they've done through the years.
Yeah, in that same vein, I've actually seen some of these. I'll call them questionable. I don't know if it was stolen, if it wasn't. I've actually spoken to the vice president of the Hall of Fame on this matter, and there are some very rare Tiger contracts that came out from very old. And I wrote the Tigers, and the Tigers wrote me back basically saying they don't care, which really surprised me. It's like, this was before we owned the team. Please don't publicize this. You're making false accusations. And I'm just trying to help. So yeah. I thought that was interesting.
You told me about that, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
And which ones were those?
It was Hank Greenberg. It was signed Henry Greenberg, and his parents had to notarize it because he was under 17 at the time. Right. It was Hal Newhouser and it was Rick Farrell. And I reached out to the families of two of the three. I reached out to the Tigers just to say, listen, do you know about this? Was this in your possession ever at one time? Just what are your thoughts even? But I never got a response.
It's a really difficult thing to go through. You know, I just saw a post, and I don't know, Eric, if you saw this. There's a guy on Instagram who posts Major League bats or one of game bats, and he had posted a Chipper Jones game used bat, and Chipper Jones replied saying that was stolen from my locker. You'll be hearing from me or hearing from my lawyer. But you know what? At the end of the day, it's really hard to prove that stuff. And a great case was Ernie Banks back many years ago. A friend of mine went up to him with a game bat at a Cub convention, and Banks basically said, "Hey, this is mine. This was stolen. I'm taking it back." This is, you know, we're talking, I believe this was closer to like 2003 or 4. And, you know, Ernie Banks retired, what, in 69, 70? When did 69 maybe, right? 70?
Yeah, something around then.
So Banks was done by then, and he's got this bat, and Banks took it. So I'm taking it. I'm keeping it. I don't care what you say. So the guy actually had to go get the police and say, "Hey, I got a problem here." And I know it's going to sound weird, but Ernie Banks will not give me this bat back. And they said to Ernie, "Well, did you file a police report?" And he goes, "No, I never filed a police report." Okay, well, you got to give the guy his bat back. You can't prove it was stolen from you. But I know it was taken out of my locker. Well, you got to give it back. So, you know, unless you could prove it was, unless you could prove that, it's very difficult. So in Chipper Jones, and someone post down there, the players weren't joking. That's true about him. Chipper Jones was really upset about his bat being stolen. And you know,
Isaiah Thomas did the same thing recently.
Yeah, well, Isaiah Thomas, the thing that happened with Isaiah Thomas is that trophy of his from the, was it 94 All-Star game when he was MVP, or what year it was, but he had it on display at his old high school. I think in last June, his coach died. This famed coach at St. Joe's in Chicago died, and they broke into the school and stole a bunch of stuff. One of the things was the trophy. I know a bunch of people in the Chicagoland area who were offered that, and they took a pass on it. It ended up going into Heritage. Heritage tweeted about it before the sale, and next thing you know, there was a firestorm. I was actually involved a little bit in helping out and putting some parties together and getting that taken care of. So I'm glad it got resolved. Isaiah Thomas has the trophy back, and all parties are better off, you know, and stuff like that happens. I mean, I'll tell you, when I was back many years ago, 1990, Carlton Fisk is my favorite player. And a buddy of mine sold me a game-ready Fisk bat. It was like taken right out of his locker. So I bought it for, $50 or $100. Spring training comes around, him in Sarasota, and I know Fisk. And I said, "Hey, Pudge, check this out. Can you sign this?" He goes, "Man, where'd you get this?" And I said, "I bought it at a card show or something." He's like, "Man," he's like, "that was right out of my locker. That is some good wood." He goes, "How about this? How about I make you a deal? How about I make you a deal right now?" I said, "Okay." And he's with Mark Sullivan, the old Red Sox catcher who was trying to hang on with the White Sox towards the end of his career. And Fisk reaches into his bat bag. And this is back in the day when the Sox had started playing at a new stadium, but they still had to dress at an old stadium. And I remember following Fisk to the new stadium because I had just gotten to spring training. And anyway, so I parked there, and he goes in his trunk and reaches out, and he grabs this game bat, and he goes, "How about I give you this gamer for that new bat?" I mean, how could I turn it down? I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, I can't say no to that." He's like, "Okay." He's like, "I'll sign it to you." He signed it to me, and I still have it. And it's a great game bat from Fisk. So stuff like that happens where a lot of players get stuff stolen from their lockers. Frank, you mentioned the contracts. You know, teams lose them. You know what? Players lose them. You put documents away, you store them. Sometimes they get lost. Law offices, like I said, for years, law offices have been paying storage places to hold their files for them. Well, sometimes they don't pay the bills, or they go out of business, or those files, they go missing. And that's where you have stuff. That's where Walt Disney checks come from, and that's where contracts come from, because that stuff just either gets disposed of or sold, or people take it year after year. So,
I got a question for you, Steve.
Sure.
I'm seeing a lot of the new thing, and I don't know. It's something I never saw collecting in my 30 years. I'm seeing baseballs come out with crazy inscriptions. I'm not talking about the current players. I'm talking like I'm going to bore people with names like Ted Lyons or like Willard Brown, Negro League player. They're coming out sweet spot baseballs or full name with their Hall of Fame at the bottom. And it's just blowing my mind that someone would even think about when this player was alive and signing this baseball to ask them to sign their full name and ask them to add their Hall of Fame year. Have you been seeing this as well?
Well, you know what? There was a few collectors that I will tell you that were ahead of their times. There's Tom Eakin, who is out of Ohio.
Okay.
And Tom Eakin collected back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and he was way ahead of his time. Tom Eakin would have a box. It was indestructibles, like this big, right? He'd put in their baseballs. He'd put in cuts. He'd have a little thing that would just come out, and it was like an accordion, and all these cuts would come out. And he would send a pen, and the pen was attached to a string.
Wow.
And he would send a player, and he said, please sign very slowly on the sweet spot, include your Hall of Fame year. Jackie Robinson, Roger Maris, 61 and 61, Satchel Paige, Jimmy Fox, the list goes on. And then he'd sign cuts. Then he'd send another package with like 10, 15 photos. There are guys, the Florida guy, I can't think of his name, Platt or one of those guys. I just can't really think of it. They were kind of ahead at the time. Some of these guys did stat balls way back then, way back in the 50s and 60s.
Wow.
Just a rare collector. But what I do see, and the stuff you're mentioning, is I know where a lot of the bad stuff comes from. And the forgers usually will target guys like, not a Hall of Famer, Billy Southworth, and they'll do guys like Jesse Haynes, and they'll do Ted Lyons, and they'll start doing stat balls where they'll come up all on the side panel with all stats them. And I've seen real Jesse Haynes like that, but I've also seen some bad ones. They're coming out of Southern Illinois, and they have been for years. There's a forger that's very well known. He's on Facebook. He's a real good looking guy. But he's been forging trading cards. He's been forging baseballs, jerseys, hats, and then he distributes them to a couple local guys, and then they farm them all out and sell them. And hopefully they're watching, because I know some of them do watch. And he's been doing it for years and years and years and years. And he's been doing stuff like that, and that's what he targets. But like this, Eric, this is something that I've mentioned with Eric like 10,000 times. And Frank, you might agree or disagree with this, but I think you'll agree. As these forgers stay, and you've probably heard me say this, they stay at that Mendoza line. When you start to cross over and you go up here and you want to hit like Roberto Clemente, you're probably going to get in the radar too much. But if you stay down here in this line, you're probably going to do okay. And you do the guys like L.C. Greenwood, you do the little rookie cards here and there. You don't think any of the Bo Jacksons, stuff like that. You don't think people notice, but they do. So the thing is the Mendoza line guys, and I keep mentioning this a lot. When guys float up here, they start to get noticed. And the stuff you mentioned, Frank, tonight, that's where people are starting to get noticed. When you start doing stat balls, and you're in Frank, what do you do? Common sense, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the first thing you go to. You're going to common sense, and you're saying, wait a minute. This doesn't make sense. Now, guys used to do it at shows once in a while, and you've seen the Mantle balls, and people used to say to me, "Oh, if you want to get Mickey to do that, you'd have to bring up a pretty girl, and he would do Hall of Fame 74 or 1956 or any of that stuff, or number 7, excuse me." The thing I'll tell you is it wasn't overly common, and finding stat balls on guys, it's some of them, it's like just doesn't happen. So, yeah, that's a good call, Frank. I really appreciate you pointing that out. You're obviously an advanced collector. Shannon Williams also mentioned it was Platt, and he did a bunch of that stuff. He did a bunch of the inscribed balls for years, and years and years and years going back. I keep talking here, but just an interesting tidbit, and I don't even know if you know this, Frank and Eric. I don't know if you know this. Let's say if you know this, a little bit of history here. So starting in 1953, maybe 1954, the Baseball Hall of Fame, they commissioned someone who worked there, and they said, you know what, we should start having the guys sign baseballs. So whatever the 54 class, 55, they'd try and get together. By the way, they couldn't always find a dozen balls, but they'd get 6 or 8. But then in 53, you'd have guys still from, the early days back in the 30s and 40s come back. So they would get those guys. So the Baseball Hall of Fame has now an archive of signed baseballs. And they got a little better as the years went on, and the balls were easier to get in the 60s and 70s. but there's a dozen Melots. Matter of fact, I think there's 15 Melot signed balls. There's Earl Combs, who's a really tough single ball, and I'd put him up there as one of the tougher Hall of Fame single balls. He's just almost non-existent. There's all those guys, and there's even the new guys, and players have actually looked forward to going to sign their dozen or 24 balls so they go in the Hall of Fame. So I don't know if you guys knew that, but all those old players, Tris Speaker, Larry Lajoie, just if you name it, they were alive in the 50s. Cy Young, they signed those balls, and they're in the Baseball Hall of Fame. They have, it's called the ball wall. It's on the back wall of the Hall of Fame in their archive. This is the 3D room, as they call it. Not a lot of people get to go there, but very fascinating stuff. So I thought you'd get a kick out of that, Frank.
I love that stuff. I don't know if anyone else does, but it's fun. Earl Combs is very common Hall of Famer. His family released a bunch of checks. So
but he's not a very common Hall of Famer in a baseball. So, because his wife signed most of his mail for him through the years, and people would send him baseballs or they'd send him stuff to sign. Most people wouldn't sign balls, but they wouldn't come back with a signature. Most of the time you get his wife's autograph. So
yeah, I didn't know that.
That's why single balls are really tough. But Eric, speaking of baseballs, this kind of leads us into this. And Frank, this is a problem I've seen throughout the years in this business. And it's someone that's more predominant now, and people are taking things to a new level. It kind of started back in, the late 90s, early 2000s. There's a guy out of Arkansas that was doing laser copies of stuff, and bad guys out in prison right now. But now we have what I think is really fascinating. And I want to see, Frank, if I could test your knowledge here. Eric, can we try and test his knowledge?
Yes, we sure can. I will give me just 1 second. I'll have this up for.
Eric's the magician here, so he's going to show you two things. So,
is this the Ty Cobb laser copy?
See, no, you just ruined it. You ruined the whole show for us.
You just ruined the whole thing.
I know there's a lot of questions. We'll get to them in a few
minutes. There are some questions. While I'm pulling this up, Frank, Nate Diggity, he's a very loyal viewer of this show. He says you look very familiar from Detroit Tigers games.
I'm at the Tiger games quite a bit. I have some good friends that work in the Tigers organization, and I won't name names, but they're able to get me in a few minutes early, at least before the Nets were up, which always helped get some of those tougher name autographs. And I always brought my son, and thank God players still don't say no to kids most of the time, which is great.
Yeah. All right. So here is the first one that we want to look at. And then there's that. Why don't you explain what we're looking at, Mr. Grad?
Well, since Frank ruined this, so
I'm sorry.
I was in the office just recently, and this ball comes in. I start looking at it, and by the way, guys, this is a real Heidler ball. This is a legit baseball. By the way, Frank, this is not like a rip-off ball. The ball dates to the period too. But if you go back one again, Eric, go to the original. So this is the original. Maybe 10 years ago. That's the ball, by the way. But there's the real Cobb. And this was on the bottom of a letter someone wrote to Cobb. And then if we go forward again, what someone did is they found that online or found it in someone's collection, made an exact copy of it, and they put it on a baseball. When you take a look at that right there, you start looking at that, and you're like, okay, it looks like a Ty Cobb signed baseball.
I mean, that scares me more than anything. And there's another ball, I'm sure you've seen it with Harry Truman, the before and the after. It was very faded, but somehow I guess there's processes now where they can enhance the ink. Steve, you would know this much better than I would.
Yeah, they're doing just about everything, and that's another way these guys are fooling people. And if you take a look here, but you look and you see Ty Cobb, February 19th, 27. And it's crazy to think that people are putting that type of signature on baseballs. Some of the early ones I've seen that are really badly done are like Ruth and Garrick Mathewson on Sweet Spots. I saw a few years ago at the National a Ruth side panel that was personalized to so-and-so on Christmas Day, 1927, which would be significant because of the 1927 season, and it's on Christmas. It's kind of cool. But again, it was a printed ball, and the signature and inscription were all lifted. So you have the same case here, where you have something that's lifted, and it's the same exact thing. And we're looking at that right now. I want you guys to know that stuff exists. We obviously rejected this, but it's out there. So, just be really careful what you're doing. And Frank, you're an advanced collector. If you saw something like this online, that could make it into an auction, no problem. I mean,
well, it's a real autograph. You know what I'm saying? Granted, it wasn't actually signed, it's not live ink, but that is his signature. And even the February 1927 is his real inscription. So that's what really concerns me as a collector.
See, and that's where that would throw you off too. You would see that inscription and be like, "Oh, that's okay." He put the date on there. That would aid to that. So I just wanted to show that, Frank, you're an advanced guy. You see stuff like that.
And I see they used the green ink, which actually would throw me off. I don't think he used the green ink until the 40s, I want to say.
Yeah, it was a little later. Cobb really wasn't using that much back in the early days. So that's another thing too. But see, Frank, that's where the bad guys get it wrong, is they miss little nuances. Like the Detroit forger that was busted. He missed a lot of the little stuff. He just couldn't tune in too much the little stuff. So, under magnification, you could see that there was no overlay, no overlap. The ball, it was printed right on there, and you could just see it all under magnification. Now, taking a look at the naked eye, you're like, well, that's a pretty nice looking copper, but it's not. So wanted you guys to see that, Frank. Obviously, we appreciate you joining us. We're running up towards the end here, where we're going to catch up on some questions and some stuff. So, but Frank, keep collecting, I guess, right? Isn't that a good idea?
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I hope I didn't bore your audience too much there.
Well, just a little bit. I mean, those crappy.
Yeah, I know. Ted Lyons is not a real common, sexy name.
You showed some Cub players. That's a real problem for me.
I'm sorry. Well, the only rare White Sox Hall of Famer is George Davis, and I think there's two known in the modern circles that are not in private collections.
Right. There is not a lot at all. So I know what you mean. And there's still some good stuff. How about Joe Jackson? Not a Hall of Famer, but it's close.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Frank, thank you so much for.
I did break out my Luis Robert ball, but I guess that's probably too recent for most of you.
Awful, yeah. And he's cooled off the last. I'm trying to figure out when he's had a couple hits in a row. He's been really cold lately. But he still is second in AL Rookie of the Year run or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't have a Abreu ball, do you?
I do not.
Anderson?
I know. I had a choice between the two, and that one was Beckett's Witness, so that's why I picked that one.
Anderson's
graphs
371 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, you take care.
Well, best of luck to your White Sox and to your Bears.
Thanks, my man. Good talking to you. Okay.
Take care.
See you, Frank.
All right, Frank. Good night, Frank. And guys, hang tight. We're not going anywhere. Steve and I will still be hanging out here as we remove Frank from the show. Thanks again, Frank, for hopping on. We got a lot of questions here that we should try to address some of them if we can, if you don't mind. So you did kind of go over how we knew that ball was a fake. How long? My question to you is how long did it take you guys to figure that out?
Well, the first thing I did is I looked at it and I'm like, let me take a look at that. And when you look at older stuff, you want to start looping it. Then I looked at some exemplars and I sat there with Larry, and Larry and I were like, man, there's something fishy going on here. And I found the matching exemplar and I'm like, well, look at this. This is really convenient. And you start looking at that ink more and you don't see much going on there. And it's pretty obvious, the ink wasn't aged. It was kind of just sitting on the ball. It was obvious that it was a manufacturer type feel. I still don't know how they got it on that baseball. I have no clue at all. I don't even have any, I don't know, but they got it on a vintage ball like that. They did a good job of it. So it tells you what to watch out for.
Absolutely. This is a good question here because I remember being in Cleveland when this happened, when I saw this happen with my own two eyes with you, and it did not end well for the booth. But how often do you find fake stuff at conventions?
All the time. It's pretty constant. I'll tell you, from customer submissions at a show like the National, I'd say we run about 40% fake. Really? So it's a high number. The stuff we see in the office, it's pretty high fake. And I did want to touch on that too today, just real quick. Just be really careful. Right now is the time. Tom Brady, Mahomes, Watson, the hot players, they're all going to be heavily forged. And I just looked on eBay just to check, and I did obviously pull up some real Tom Brady stuff. But then I pull up, mixed in the middle is there's a fake ball for $900 something dollars. And, there's Buccaneers jerseys and stuff like that. So just be really careful what you're doing, folks. This is the time of the year for it, Eric, where people get burned, football starting, and, the season's hot. This guy's got a Tom Brady Buccaneers jersey obtained in person, ends at $610. And there's no way that's legit. And that's the type of stuff we're going to be constantly seeing. And we do see it all the time. So,
you bring up the time of year with the start of football and, other sports winding down or getting ready to ramp back up again. But the other thing that I would assume brings out a lot of fakes is the holiday season. Is that true?
Yeah, that's 100% true. Good call. Yeah, now we're in the time. So you have got baseball kind of kicking into the postseason pretty soon. You've got football started. Basketball is wrapping up pretty soon here. And then, you've got the holiday season coming up. And whatever's hot in baseball will carry on. So whoever wins the World Series, those playoff teams, they're going to be hot for Christmas. So just be really careful what you're doing and getting into. It's dangerous.
Absolutely. While we're chatting here, I'm going to share a link right now in the comment section for you to go check out our special for the month of September. And real briefly, it's pretty nice deal. BAS September special, $30 off $30 baseball encapsulation and authentication fees for autographs that would normally be $49 or under. The list of signers for $49 is amazing. Just use promo code GOTBALLS at on your form. Who came up with that? Who came up with that? Was that you?
I think it was you.
It wasn't me. I just want to mention that to you guys. Also, before we end the show and before we get into the questions, you guys see on the ticker that the show was brought to you by Iconic Auctions and Vintage Breaks. Please go patronize them as well. Vintage Breaks has a great giveaway that you need to go check out right now and make sure that you are a part of that because you always want some free stuff if you can get it. All right. Absolutely. Ziggy, I see your question. This is not the show to answer that question, but if you want to join us on another show where we're talking grading, we can definitely do that and see if we can get clarification for you on that. Shu York wants to know, can I ask if you can get a top-of-the-line Hall of Fame athlete to sign any stock item? Is Pro Cut authentic jersey the way to go?
So I would think so. Yeah. Not knockoff jerseys. Definitely a Pro Cut jersey. But, I mean, that's a Hall of Fame player. When you're dealing now with modern players, I don't even know if it's worth it because players switch teams and, you've got Brady switching over and, someone like Phillip Rivers with the Colts, what happens to his stuff that he had with the Chargers. So, that's an interesting thing to think about. Obviously the Hall of Fame stuff. Yeah, that's okay. Frank Robinson, if he was alive, or a player of that ilk or category. I mean, if you're getting Carlton Fisk or Mike Piazza, get him on a real jersey. Don't get him on a knockoff.
Yeah, definitely want to get them on a real jersey. Also, a question that that I saw a lot today that I've filled in is I know that we're doing some maintenance on our website and the verification site is down. I think it's back up this afternoon. I was told it's going to be. It's back up. So that there was a lot of questions about that. Yes, it's back up. Steve said it'll still be working. Darren wants to know, Steve, will you come to Vancouver, BC? Obviously, once the borders open.
Probably not anytime soon. Sorry, it's not going to happen. We talked about doing a show up there at one time, and it's quite some time ago. Right now, it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Especially with everything going on and travel to Canada and the United States. We're barely doing stuff here in the U.S. So I'd say that probably not anytime soon.
Okay. Sweaty wants to know: do you consider video evidence of in-person signatures for authentication?
No. I don't look at that stuff at all. We just look at the autograph. That's it. Videos, stuff like that, photos, that's great. But the autograph's got to speak for itself. So, no, I don't take a look at that stuff at all. I don't care.
Not at all, then.
No, don't care.
So that's another question that I see a lot is, I have photo evidence. So you need to see the autograph live.
Yeah, you know what? I see that all the time. And I wish I could show these. Someone sent me recently a picture of like someone sitting there signing, and next thing you know, they're signing like a guitar, not a guitar, but like, let's say an album or a photo. And next thing you know, they Photoshop a guitar right in there and you can't even tell the difference. It's insane. So that it's not really something I consider when you work as an authenticator. The number one thing you want to consider above all is the autograph. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You really do. If there's an extenuating circumstance or whatever, sometimes you can consider provenance or where it comes from. But to be quite frank with you, the autograph has got to talk, not the photo proof. And I was there and the video proof. I'm not interested in that stuff. I want to see the autograph. That speaks for itself.
Understand. Mr. York wants to know, can a basketball or football deflate or fall apart? He says he's seen Michael Jordan UDA Wilson balls that look like they're cracked. Is that possible?
Yeah, it happens all the time, man. It is like very common. And I'll tell you the truth. I think footballs are the one thing that I've seen so many of them, some basketballs too. There's a way to do it where you can get the bladder replaced and it looks like a real mess. And I know people that have done it, but yeah, it happens and they do ruin, basically they ruin the surface. So, I don't know what to do in that case. Maybe get the bladder fixed. I don't even know what to do,
How come my wife asked me this the other day and I don't know the answer. How come I've seen a lot with footballs specifically. How come they're deflated? Like when they're getting, like, say, multiple signatures on it, how come they'll deflate the ball?
Well, you know what those are called, to be honest with you, those are called like racker balls. So those are the ones that like autograph people bring out and they cost $8 or $9, and it's easier to put a bunch of them in your bag at once. So if you're out doing an event or at the Pro Bowl or whatever, you could have a bunch in a bag at one time. If you're walking around with a bunch of inflated footballs, it's not going to work out too well for you.
That makes a lot of sense. Jay Carpenter wants to know, do musicians cost more than athletes to authenticate? Do you ever run specials on musicians? So let me answer the first part of that. Jay, we run specials all the time that musicians would fall into the category for the discount or the promo special. But what do you say to that? Are they more sought after, so therefore more expensive, Steve?
Well, it just depends who it is. Robert Plant, his autograph to authenticate is going to cost more than Anthony Miller from the Bears. So it just depends on, their status. If they're tough autograph, if they died early, if they're a huge star, their autograph's going to cost more to authenticate.
I would.
Sports too,
Yeah, I would guess so, because if you like that. If you like a certain band that's very popular, I don't know, say the Beatles, that's not going to be any less expensive than Anthony Miller or Mitch Trubisky. How do you feel about Mitch Trubisky now?
Oh, please stop.
Oh, we're gonna.
Hey, questions rolling, Eric. Don't ask me about Mitch Trubisky. By the way, our show schedule coming up next week, the September 23rd, we'll be at Birdie's Sports Car Dugout in Highland Park, Illinois. 3 days after that, Minnetonka, Minnesota at fan headquarters, and rounding out September, we're at E5 Sports. That's along with Joe Alpert, and that'll be in West Dallas, Wisconsin on September 28th. But you're unbelievable with that question.
Come on now.
Eric, can you please ask Steve when he's coming to Orange County? I have a Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan autograph picture. We have an event there. It's not announced yet. It's going to be in October. We're just figuring out how to announce it because can't really do a public day like we usually do because of the restrictions in California. It's going to be sometime in October, and all you have to do is contact Brian Nicklick at the OC Dugout, and we are there quite frequently. So just check him out online and go visit him and give him a call. Brian, literally, if you call him at 3:30 in the morning, he'll pick up that phone. Trust me. He's really on that phone a lot.
Michael Wu asked a good question here. How many Chadwicks have we seen since his passing?
I'd say we've seen about 50 or 60. We've seen a bunch of real ones because a lot of the guys in LA they've been bringing their stuff to us to get authenticated. There was a security guard that used to do security for him that brought a bunch of his stuff recently to get done. I think maybe 6-7 pieces. Maybe we featured some on our social media, but just be careful, folks. We mentioned this the last time. Really difficult autograph to find real, and he's also forged law. So just be very careful, please.
Absolutely, please be careful. While we got a few minutes here left, I want to share my screen one last time with you guys. And show you a giveaway that we're doing over on our Instagram account. We are trying to get to 10,000 followers on our Beckett Authentication Instagram account. We're at 8553, I think. That's where we're at right now. So we're up about 100 followers from last week. we're going to give away this Pete Rose Hit King bat, authenticated by BAS, on next week's show. But in order to get in on that, you need to go over to our Instagram page, which I've just posted right now in the comment section, and follow the rules to get in on that giveaway. And we're going to announce a winner on next week's show. I'm not even going to lie. I found this in the office. I was like, this would be a good giveaway, and I'm going to have it hooked up. So
I do want to mention one thing really quick, and still trying to find details for it. I'm going to post it on my page. One of my best friends in Florida was involved in a head-on collision. He wasn't driving drunk or anything like that. Someone was just driving on the wrong side of the road. That person that hit him ended up dying, but my buddy is in ICU, and he's going to be there for quite a while. And broken ribs and all kinds of internal bleeding, and he's in pretty bad shape. He's an actor and does a lot of male modeling. He's one of the hardest working guys I know, lives down in Florida, and he's always working on stuff. And my buddy Zach Vasquez, and he's a great collector. He's a Cowboy fan, but he's a huge collector, autograph stuff. He has a great passion for just loving the Cowboys, Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and my heart goes out to him. If I get more information, I'm going to post it on my Facebook page and my social media. Supposedly there is a fundraiser for him right now, GoFundMe, but I'm still trying to figure out if it's legit. We're waiting to hear back from his wife. So Zach is a great friend of mine, and I just ask if you say a prayer tonight or whatever, keep in your prayers. He's truly, Eric, I tell you this, man, in my life, I'm lucky to know maybe just a handful of guys like this. He is right up there, and I appreciate everybody's comments. Thank you so much. Zach is a great guy, active in the community, huge, like I said, Star Wars, loves Harrison Ford, loves his Cowboys, and I can't root against the Cowboys right now because of him. So until he gets better, and he better pull through and get through this, my heart goes out to him. So I just want everybody to say a prayer for him if you could. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for expressing your comments. I truly appreciate it.
Yes, my prayers are with Zach as well. That's going to wrap it up this week, though, Steve. Thank you so much for having the great idea of Frank coming on and boring us with Matt Nukes.
Yeah, Frank Chance, Tinker's Never a Chance. Yeah, really awful stuff. Huh?
No, Frank was great. Thanks, Frank, for coming on. We really appreciate it. And guys, we'll be back next week. What do we got next week? Have we set that in stone yet, or can we? We're still working on it. It's a work in progress. All right, so we can't announce it yet, but it's going to be a good show just the same. Guys, thanks for watching. Good night. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow.